Hi, Maria. Shehnaz here. I'm so excited. I mean, even though the subject is technically not necessarily exciting in a way, because it's actually tragic that we have to talk about chronic disease. However, versus synchronicity and alignment is where the hope lies for everybody who has anything chronic going on. And disease generally means lack of ease, means you're not in the flow. And chronic actually means something that's persisting over time. Chronic is actually related to chronos, which is time related, which is something that is continuously happening, or at least from your perception, it is something that whenever you tap into that information, you feel like I am constantly having pain, or I'm constantly in a back pain, or, like people have these certain chronic disease. So it's a very interesting thing. The reason I wanted to connect that with synchronicity and alignment is because, to me, if you're in the flow with everything around you, making a tube torus in a very beautiful way, and everything is just going in a way that you are in a 0 point energy, feeling still, that's the state that we all need to be, right? It's a neutrality, which is like everything is following its rhythm, and you're going along with it. It's a beautiful imagination, right? So the whole thing is that if you are in that flow at all times, it will be very hard for you to chronically be resisting, because chronic disease occurs because you are resisting yourself within your blood in the flow. And that's why your marker circulation is impaired, and majority of the diseases are connected to the microcirculation. So here, I would love for you to explain, because that's what you do. Like, you basically look at the blood under the microscope, and that's what you do, and you actually love it. That's your passion, and life is in the blood. So from your perspective, what do you think chronic disease is?
That's a loaded question. So it's not easy, because it's metaphysical, because your thoughts control the chemical responses from your brain to the rest of your body and affect you all the way down to blood flow, like you said, microcirculation, and the cell itself. Especially your signals that come through and tell certain or specific organs, or even like your adrenals, to push out specific types of chemicals. So I mean, everything, your thoughts and what's coming out of your heart affects your mind. It's heart-brain coherence. Everything that comes out of your heart is affecting your brain. Everything that comes out of your brain is affecting the rest of your body. So essentially, your heart is your driver. I can look at that under the microscope and tell you a little bit about where someone's thoughts are. You can see it physically in the actual red blood cell morphology. You can see it in the urine. You can see what's coming out, whether it's due to infection or high pressure. I'm going to say like breakdown, where you have casts, that come out, and you can see these things under the microscope. Whenever you're looking at someone's blood, you get an entire picture. Same thing like with microbiology, right? I can get a sample, and I can grow something, and I can tell you a lot about a person's life and habits and where they've been. Someone, for instance, who's got like a chronic kidney disease, a chronic disease like that, well, you can see that under the red blood cells. You can see it because you have wall breakdown, you have lipid breakdown of the outer walls, you have something that we see like these spherocytes and acanthocytes and different morphologies, pressures under the kidney, all kinds of different things. Like, so you could see these things, and these changes take place under the microscope, as well as, fluctuating numbers, right? Do I think there's a chronic fungal infection somewhere? Okay, well, then I'm going to look at X, Y, and Z, and then look at the smear under the microscope and see if that matches what I'm thinking. So it really does all tie together. Okay. I guess, yeah, so it's a loaded question, like,
but then, yeah,
because the heart and brain are connected.
Right. But basically what you are saying in a very simple English is that your thought affects your health. And if you have a chronic condition, then you need to start looking at your lifestyle to see what type of reprogramming you're doing to yourself. I mean, first of all, we are our worst enemy, partly because most of the time we come in our own way, which is the main reason we are not in the flow, which is the main reason you have these blood clots that you see under the microscope, which is the main reason you have diseases. And then that disease, ultimately, if you don't take care of it, becomes chronic disease, and then it becomes a lifestyle. And, so it comes back to the very fact, how do you exit that? It's truly, how do you create it is how you uncreate it, or how you go back, like reverse engineer the entire process and go back and do what needs to be done to come back to yourself.
It's really wild because I used to do think of it what you may, but I used to do CrossFit. I did CrossFit for like 6 years, and I went and I had to have the kidney transplant, an auto transplant. So it was from myself to myself because I had a bad constriction. So it was a physical anomaly. So I had that, and then afterwards, I thought, geez, how am I ever going to come back? There is a very significant relationship between the heart and the brain that most people do not realize. Before the surgery, I had a lot of stress, a lot of, incoherence, call it. After the surgery, there were some things that I really learned about myself and some tools, metaphysical and otherwise. And I wanted to break the stress cycles, right? So you literally, with chronic diseases, you literally are in a self-deprecating cycle that you can, and you do have the power to get out of, and you do have the power to release that dependency. You just have to learn, right? So and that's where I know a lot of your coursework is going to be coming in for people, is learning and doing that inner work and breaking those cycles. But I can tell you that after I had that transplant, and I went and I learned about brain and heart coherence, and I learned about how to even with my blood supply all coming from one side of my from my body, essentially, because I have 2 kidneys over here now, so a lot of that was rerouted and equilibriums were shifted. But your body's smart, and it learned, right? My body learned, and I can tell you that once I understood coherence, I never performed so well. And I had aged, several years, but I never performed so well. So you do have the power to break the cycle, and you can manifest whatever you want to physically, internally. And I know that your courses are going to be instrumental in bringing people to that. I had to learn the hard way, right? Whereas, if I would have just had you, at my beck and call,
right,
it wouldn't have been so hard.
And my whole thing is because, and that's why even my book, Quantum Being, is kind of like leveraging the human craft being so incredibly amazing and powerful. And then what you're saying exactly is like one of my courses all about understanding that how you can activate your cell, right, through the central sun. So it's like a light activation class. And my goal is that I can facilitate that, but I can't facilitate that all the time. So I want to teach you how to do it. So you can just go in your backyard or go downstairs if you're living in an apartment, just be outside and touch your feet on the ground, say hi to the central sun, and create the tube torus and let the show begin. Because the funny thing is that if you even do that like 30 minutes a day, especially if you have a chronic condition, then you are completely teaching your body that, I can be at ease, I can be in flow, I can be in alignment, even if it's only for 30 minutes in that whatever 24-hour day you have. The point is you're reprogramming or remembering, right? You're stimulating back everything that you already have. And then the more you do it, the more you want it. And then you exit the pattern of chronicness. So, and the biggest challenge we have in our society, right? Autoimmune disease. Like whenever you hear that word, I've been tagged with so many chronic disease, Maria, that I know you're going to laugh at this, but if I would have taken those labels in, I would be collecting disability right now. I qualify. So it's kind of hilarious, right? But I didn't take on it. Fibromyalgia was the first one that I was given as a tag. And the thing is that it's very easy to feel sorry for yourself. And it's also very easy to feel victim. And then what happens now, it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. Like anytime the doctor tells us anything, we look at it as like a word of God. We make it our own, and then we completely mess our lives up. So just like you said, going back, right? Thought affects your health because our DNA has an antenna and is constantly communicating with everything that is coming from human beings in the form of sound, or it's coming from the environment in the form of spike protein. So it's coming from everywhere. It's taking it and it's doing whatever it could, depending on where you are in your immune system health.
That's right. And you don't have to, people don't understand, just because you go into a practitioner or someone's office and they provide you with a label does not mean that's what you are. It does not mean that's what you have. In my opinion, is a big fat excuse.
To cover your ass so that you don't get
I'm just telling you that in the medical field that they have to practice in a very litigious society, which means that there's always the CYA. So you're going to leave here with a label, whether you like it or not. So what does that tell you about going in? I haven't been in years, not years. And I don't care. It doesn't, I don't need it.
Exactly.
So I don't accept those labels. You don't have to. I mean, you can, obviously, if you want to. It's not for everybody, but that is what breaking free means. And it's very empowering. Whenever you no longer have that parachute, let's say even with something as simple as health insurance, okay? So if you have health insurance, like we were talking, a few days ago, and I said, it doesn't really bother me because it was a parachute. I just don't have one. So I don't have a choice but to be, just hot, stinking, hot fired, creative and energetic and happy and well. I don't have a choice about that. So that's who I have to be, or that's who I get to be, because words have meanings, right? And your DNA, you're right. You hear it, you feel it, and then you emulate that from the inside out.
Exactly. And it's funny because, to me, like insurance kind of does provide a crutch in a way, because you feel like if anything truly happens, I can always go to the doctor. The only problem is the entire system is designed to keep you in a disease state. So when that is the goal or the intention of the system, then you are basically, anytime when you go to a surgeon, right, you are wondering whether you should do a surgery or not. What are they going to do? That's their expertise. They're going to convince you that surgery is the best way because that's what they thrive at. That's their expertise. So you're kind of stuck because you can't just go to one doctor who can look at your entire body and say, okay, let me look at all your layers and all your body as a whole. Yeah. Whomever you go to, they are like thinking that, okay, you're here. So of course, I'm going to give you an excuse to keep coming back to me. So that's the general theme. That's
how it's set up. That's the tier. And what people don't understand is that we're not sitting here knocking on an MD or a DO or anything like that, or even a surgeon. What we're saying is this is how the system is set up. This is a litigious system. So they have to cover their own backs to make sure that you are given a diagnosis, you are prescribed this and that, you are recommended for surgery. And that way, the family can't come back on the practice, if something happens to you. And that's just the way it is. That's how the system is not set up to prevent you from harming yourself, right?
Exactly. So you kind of, right. And then you become in this enabling behavior, partly because, if you go to the doctor for some problem solving, you get a medicine for that. Then when you take the medicine, you create more problems. You have to go to now other doctors to get help from that. And then you are in this mess of situation where you take 10 pills a day. And here you've created this mess. And now even if you solve it, you're trying to solve it, but now you feel overwhelmed. So you're like, you know what? I'm just going to take Prozac. I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean?
One metformin, like how many people are on an anti-diabetic medication called metformin? One metformin affects over 800 metabolic processes in your body. Wow. One pill. It takes upwards of a year sometimes for you to get over one course of 7 to 10 days of an antibiotic treatment. So it takes that long for your body to repair itself from the damage that it does. Sometimes, sure, you need a rescue, but oh my gosh, we should not be relying on these things. And you know what you're telling your body? I mean, this is your part of the field. What you're telling your body from the inside out is that I can't do it. Or even worse, we create these people in society, the Munchausen Syndrome, where my child has this and that, and oh my God, feel sorry for me. And then you have this parent who takes this poor kid in to the doctor, 10 and 20 times a year, for absolutely nothing. And then the kid identifies as, I'm a sickly child.
Exactly.
I had all of these problems when I was young and growing up, and then you're teaching children from the bottom up that they are disabled or that there's something wrong with them when they are the most powerful creatures on this planet.
Exactly. I mean, I was just thinking like my son, for example, one of my son is very scared of darkness, right? So I'm teaching him how to train his eyes. So kind of like we're sitting in a dark room, right? And he's freaking out. And I said, you need to sit with your eyes open because you need to integrate this darkness. And after 5 minutes, like I told him that now can you see enough that you can go without turning the light on, exit the room, because I'm teaching him all that. But the point of the story is that our eyes is so adaptable that if you sit in a dark, right? In the beginning, you don't see anything, but slowly but surely you start seeing it. So what I'm saying is that we have this natural adaptability because we have similar system at work, at play. When you get a fever, it's because our body is saying that you have an infection, but it's trying to fight it itself. So it's not like it's actually your body's doing something right. But then what you take Tylenol, right? Because you are scared and holy shit, I have a fever. And then right away you put a stump on it, just like when you have a diarrhea, you take something to stop on it, you put a cork or you put a patch on a problem that's not properly, gracefully solved.
Yes.
And
and I think I told you this, but when it was a year ago, and Dwayne and I, my husband and I got we became ill, and we took 2 different courses of, he didn't like the pain, he didn't like the bow pain, he didn't like any of that pain, so he took I think a couple ibuprofen or Tylenol or whatever, and I said, you shouldn't do that, you should listen, you should not do that. And he says, I feel like hell. I'm like, I understand that, but your body will work it out, and it will take 10 to 14 days for you to create these antibodies, and then you're going to be like superhuman, and then you're going to be like me, and we're going to be superhumans. So what I would do is to assist my body whenever I was feeling feverish or anything like that, and it would wax and wane, right? Just depending on where your immune system's at, fighting this purge or purging, at this time, which is what it does. So I would go in and I would take about like 4 hot baths at a time, during the day. And that is the only time I really felt good. So I was giving my body a break, right? And I was raising my temperature and helping it. So I'm working with my immune system, and I was raising my temperature artificially so that internally it wasn't, my body wasn't having to work so hard. I recovered in just a matter of days, where it took him more like 4 to 6 weeks.
Interesting. So that's kind of like along the same line, like when people have, let's say, we're going to go into this extreme example because I want to do a little bit of example thing for other people who are listening.
Oh, and just real quick, I'm not saying go do what I did. I'm saying whatever you have going on, try to work with your body instead of against it. Don't fight the normal mechanisms, because maybe what you've been taught or what we've been taught isn't correct.
Exactly. And along the same line, what I'm saying is, because I understood what you were saying, is that like when people have cancer, for example, and yes, we do have a problem. Nobody's saying close your eyes and let the be eaten. But the whole thing is that when you do a chemotherapy, then what happens? There's pros and cons, right? The biggest con with that is that now your body, it's almost like taking Tylenol is not as bad. But if you take a lot of medicine, then your body loses its capacity to heal itself. And therefore, it creates more problem than before. So now you're not even solving the problem of cancer. You have other problem you started because of chemotherapy. So I think the whole thing is that if you can work with whatever you have, because we all have our own strength and weakness within us, it's like a game, we play game of life, right? So you have to have a good strategy, but try to come up with creative way to really nourish your body, because that's why, I love like all these institutes that are opening up all over the world where people go in there. And then it's like they give you like, raw juice, or they put you in a hyperbaric chamber, or they give you this incredibly, amazingly healthy environment. And then 30 days after, you have no cancer. I mean, there are documentaries on Prime Amazon when people
100%.
Right?
To me, honestly, for me, cancer is one of the easiest things to correct, in my opinion.
Why?
Because it is because you control the internal environment. Like we were talking earlier, and I said, you are what you eat. Well, your body's cells replace themselves. Each organ system has its own timeline, which it, turns over cells and replaces the dead cells. It's a pre-programmed cell death, and our bodies are very smart. And so this is already something that happens, right? So when I see someone with cancer, and I'm not an MD, just to remind people, I'm not an MD, thank God right now, because I'm okay with not being part of the Western medical system anymore. But when I see that, I know that is an overproliferation of a cell that has cyclically divided. It's divided and it's not divided accurately. So there's a problem with the environment that the cells are swimming in, whether it's highly acidic, you're overly exposed to glyphosates, you have an overexposure to toxic substances like polyethylene glycols, heavy metals. And this is interesting, Shehnaz, but you almost never, ever, ever see a cancer patient that is not also overwhelmed with parasitic infection.
Oh, wow.
The two go hand in hand. And I do have a parasitology background. So this is correct. There are different types, lots of different types of parasites. And they are not all worms. So, some of them have one eyeball, and some, have little creepy fingers, and
have you seen them
microscopic.
Have you seen them under the microscope?
Oh yeah.
So you kind of know that there are all these different creatures that live in our blood.
Yes.
I mean, that's
Yes. They have even microscopic eggs that can burrow. They have like a little hook. Some of them, they will burrow into your heel, but their normal habitat, some of them is in your intestines. Some of them is in a vaginal canal. It just depends. They're everywhere.
So help me understand that if there is a parasitic infection, which is very similar to having cancer, and it could be that what you're saying is that majority of the people who have cancer, they already have parasitic infection because it's the similar thing. So my question to you is that if that is the case, let's assume that's a chronic situation here. Now, what can starve those bad parasites? Because I know that medical medium, by the way, have this 4 thing that they say can starve those, and I want your opinion on it. So according to medical medium, it says that corn, wheat, dairy, and eggs, if you eliminate those 4 from your diet, supposedly, then it helps starve any kind of infection that is chronic in your body. But I like your opinion on that and suggestion.
Yes, true. But understand that only because of, I want to say, the source of the vegetation or the egg or the cheese, or the dairy. A lot of that depends on the source.
Okay.
And whenever you have mass manufacturing, it's obviously very difficult to control the source. You can get a parasitic or a bacterial infection from fresh vegetables and fruits. So but the point is you are more in control whenever you are eating, a whole food diet. Like I know that they recommend with your leafy greens and certain fruits and things like that, but you're in control of the cleaning, right, start to finish. So it's not like, it's processed and that there's contamination or there's glyphosate or but there's going to be pesticides, right? So you're always, but it is true. I mean, that's true. Also true with allergies, and what you're doing is you're fixing your internal environment, your interstitial space where your cells swim. So if you don't have cells that are breaking down, they're obviously not dividing incorrectly, they're healthy. So that's why, a lot of times I always say, focus on cellular nutrition, not just coming from the food, but making sure, which is why I have the supplement that I do, because I know what arms the cells, what makes it stronger, and basically is like my little army of cells, and I know that they're perfectly stable and functioning. They're not overly functioning, they're not dysfunctional, or anything like that. So Medical Medium is a great book. I mean, he has great recommendations. But people just need to understand, you can do anything in moderation.
I
So
agree with that. And I love that actually, because, I always believe in that. And that's how I did. I never follow any diet. Because to me, as soon as I say the word diet, I've created a separation between me and that. And I don't want that. I want to do whatever the hell I want. But I want to do
whatever
it
you
in a
want.
way that it
Yep.
makes sense and it doesn't put me to bed. But it's interesting what you said about the source, because I actually love that too. Because if you get an eggs from like a local farm, they raise chicken really with love and affection, and you're bringing it, you're encouraging them to sell it, you're buying it, then that's a whole different story. And what you also said, that if you have like fresh vegetables and fruits, and depends on the source, you can get parasite. So at the end of the day, you have to use your intuition, right, to decide what's clean for you. And then if you bring only clean stuff in your body, then that's one way of keeping parasites away.
And also have no fear about it. So, with eggs, I understand, eggs are sometimes considered filthy and they're difficult to digest, and a lot of people can't handle eggs. But eggs have choline. Choline is very, very important for your brain. It's difficult to get that from it. That's the best source, right? So I'm not saying don't go out and eat these things. I'm saying, you know what? Look at yourself on a weekly basis. And, when we were talking about synchronicity and breaking cycles and chronic habits and chronic disease and all of that, when I say everything in moderation this is an amazing way to live, because you can have your eggs, you can have your occasional treat. You don't have to, like you said, separate yourself from all of these different things. I mean, sometimes I go and have a chocolate dipped ice cream cone and I'm not dead.
Exactly. And to me,
I feel really good.
To some extent, you have to eat things that are not necessarily 100% good to some extent, because otherwise I've seen people who are very much on a gluten-free diet. Like if they eat like one piece of bread by mistake, they end up in the bathroom. So I don't want myself to be so delicate and sensitive that I can't survive here, because everywhere is not exactly where you're going to get everything you want. So you got to be adaptable.
You have to be adaptable. Exactly. And I remember you saying that before, you had made that statement to me and said, look, and we're saying, this is what we should do, XYZ and all of this. But see, this is just a foundation. Okay. So in the same thing in the spiritual and metaphysical world, right? So this is your foundation. Are you going to be perfect? I certainly hope not, because if you are, then we don't necessarily have anything to shoot for. So, it's the same thing as looking at, with darkness comes light. So you do have to have the yin and the yang, and it's okay, to have that treat or to do these things. And even if you have, let's say you just got diagnosed with cancer, right? And I'm working with people right now who have this prognosis, and they've got pathology, so it's real, and or they've been injected, so it's definitely real, and all of this, and they're going through this, and well, what should I have? Okay, well, here's my suggestion. Don't, let's eliminate sugar. But you can have treats. You can go out sometimes and do these things, but these things feed, cancer cells. So you'll want to have a good foundation, and then, but don't separate yourself from the world. You don't have to be so strict, because then what happens if, let's say you get rid of it. Let's say it goes away and you were so strict and this is why it went away. And then you're scared to death to touch anything else.
That is true.
You know what I'm saying?
And
like you're scared to death to make a mistake.
That is true. And then stress is like a mother of all disease. So whenever you're not feeling good about something, or you feel like, oh my God, like it's almost like, I always say, isn't it ironic when you go for a pap smear, right? As a woman, we have to go. And the more you're going to be stressed, the more you're going to feel the pain, right? It's just like that with life. Like anytime when you get like contracted, you mess your own self up. So it's not like, and you're the one who feels the pain, because that's how it works.
And who frequently makes the most mistakes? The person that's under the microscope. If you are being watched, if you're being watched in your every move, and that, like, let's say, that your job is on the line, or that you're being watched because you're going to be evaluated, or you're having some evaluation at work or whatever. Or let's say you're an athlete, and that your job is on the line, and the coach is watching you, and you continually just screw up. And once you start, you cannot stop. And why is that? It's chronic, and it's a cycle, because that's where your focus is.
And isn't it funny that we just talked about it yesterday in my class, and I have to mention this because I love this. So first of all, if you're being watched, so based on double slit experiment, quantum physics, observation affects momentum, observation affects the manifestation. So like, as soon as you know, especially if you know that you're being watched, then whatever you would be doing if you were not being watched is going to be very different than what you'll be doing because you're being watched. And also depends on who is watching you. If the person who's watching you, you already know they judge you, now you're going to make more mistakes. If the person who's watching you, they truly love you unconditionally, and you know that they really have a better, then you probably will perform even better. So it's interesting how all of that comes into play. And the very fact is that this whole thing becomes recursive and it feedback loop. And then you create self-fulfilling prophecy, all based off of your expectation and based off of how the universe works with the reflection and the mirror processing. And can you believe that a scene like thousands of years ago, before Jesus Christ, knew this entire, like how, everybody's holding a piece of us, right? And how everybody's reflection that we're seeing affects us internally. And so internal and external is connected. And going back to the very thing you said from the very beginning, that how our thought affects our health and everything that we're inputting in our body in the form of food, in the form of thought, in the form of belief, in the form of people around you, all of that affects you internally. And, I'd like to now come back to the fact that how do we solve the problem, right? So for me, my suggestion was that short term, you have to truly reinforce to yourself that you can exit this chronic pattern by giving a little bit of a break every day. It's almost like you're a chain smoker. You want to for 1 hour a day, you have to do something else other than smoking just to give yourself a break. So that way, what happens? It kind of puts a little bit of a crack in your pattern, right? In this habitual pattern. And then as soon as you do that, like tiny bit, so like in this particular case, if you are in pain, let's say in your body, or let's say if you have parasite, then maybe what you do is you really for one day say, I'm just going to have a very clean diet. I'm not going to have any sugar. I'm going to just see what comes in just for one day. Let's just do it for one day. And then you keep on incrementing it. And that's how you create your long-term plan. You go from your short-term to long-term. But there's a strategy that you can use to help yourself without having to follow the route where you end up taking something foreign that's not part of your body and then inhaling it every day and creating a whole bunch of side effects.
No, exactly right. I think that for people to break, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Medication. Pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
If we start and we change the perception and we say, and I know that I absolutely have been hammering the pharmaceutical and the Western medical industry for the past 2 years, just relentless. And I admit I have not been kind about it because I am not happy about what's transpiring. I do believe that there is a symbiotic relationship that can be had between Western and Eastern medicine, between the physical and the metaphysical treatments and prevention. There has to be a symbiotic relationship. And I think that that's where we start winning. So to look at people and to try to have a different perception created so that we can break the habitual cycles of, poor health, sick care versus well care or prevention, and getting people to a happier place, right? Because if people are healthy, they're generally very happy. I mean, I'm super happy. So, you know what I mean? And like, probably the best I've been in my entire life. And, and that's saying a lot because I've been through hell and back physically or medically, right? It is very scary to let go of the parachute that is the pharmaceutical magic pill, but what's going to happen to me if I stop taking it? If we change the perception, Shehnaz, I think that we can start to break that chronic cycle, right? And the perception would then be, you know what? This is okay as a rescue. And I tell people all the time, sometimes you need a rescue, and a rescue is okay. So don't let yourself go down the tubes. If you're not quite strong enough, you're not quite there mentally, emotionally, you're heart brain is not in coherence yet. You're not, electrically high enough vibration with your cells, and you're just not there, in your learning period yet, or in your learning stage to make yourself well. It's going to be very hard for people. But if you start thinking and changing your perception, saying, look, this is a rescue. I'm gonna back off of what I'm doing, because this isn't prevention. This is basically just leading me to death, because it's not making me well. So it's holding a particular disease at bay, a chronic disease at bay, perhaps, but it's not making me better. So while it's holding me at bay here, what's it doing to my other metabolic systems? Are they going to start to collapse? Am I then going to have to take another magic pill and then another magic pill? So let's change the perception, and say, look, let me start to ease off and do some of my own internal work and look at this and say, I want this to be a rescue if I need it. I don't want to be dependent on it. And I actually want prevention instead of, carrying me into death.
Right. And instead of just patching it up, because what you're saying is, like, if you are bleeding and you are going to need a stitches, you put a bandage on, because right now you are not where you can truly take the stitches. But at the end of the day, if you don't stitch it and do it properly and take care of the wound, then ultimately you're going to get an infection, you're going to have other problems. And similarly, anytime when you take anything with pharmaceutical, you always have to know that because you're putting something foreign in your body, even though it's FDA approved, there is always going to be some side effects. And that side effect, depending on how strong you are internally, can create other problems that you didn't even plan for, which is the reason we want to solve it the right way. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because, I come from a culture, right, where we were never, like, we would not go to doctor for everything unless we really have like extreme situation like jaundice, or, like you have like a situation that you need a doctor now. But for the most part, we have all these, like, we have a golden milk, which was very common in my culture growing up. And I actually make that for my children whenever they have any kind of cold symptoms. And it's actually very delicious. And now in the market, you can see golden milk everywhere, because a lot of awareness is occurring on how to embrace this Eastern philosophy of healing yourself with something that's way more delicious than popping pills. And similarly, the tincture that you make, I actually find it very delicious, because I feel the orange juice in it. And I feel that I'm doing something to protect myself from the spike protein and enhancing my immune health, which is absolutely needed more now than ever with everything that we are being bombarded on. So I think that I love the fact that what you're saying is that sometimes you may have to do it, but as long as you know that you are doing it just to patch it up temporarily, and not permanently, and not forget about it, then you're going to be fine. So just be gentle with yourself, just like, when you have been victim for most of your life. And even though you are a victor now, once in a while, you just want to be a victim for 5 minutes. Like, what, I just want to feel sorry for myself. Can
a little bit of self-pity.
Just let me vent
occasionally. Yeah, it's okay. I raised my daughter that way. This is so funny. She would come to me belly aching about something, right, as a teenager.
Right.
And I thought, how am I going to get through this teenager thing? So, because I'm more like a tiger mom, but which, that's a label, but whatever. And she would say something. I would look at her and say, you know what, Jort, you've got a day. You can have a sad day. You can feel bad for yourself for a day. But I will tell you that after that, the rest of the world doesn't care, because the world's going to keep on going, whether or not you're sad or not. So why not just be happy?
Exactly.
You
and
are
even for that one day one day while she's sad, nobody will care. But at least if that makes you feel a little bit better, do it. But at the end of the day, that's where it's very interesting fine line, right? That when you start doing something, and that's what I teach with my lifestyle teaching, right? Anything you do, as long as you can control it, because otherwise it becomes an addiction, and then it becomes a habit, and then it becomes your problem, like a chronic disease.
It's chronic.
I mean, so you are pretty much creating that story for yourself. So if you have to wrap this up, let's say chronic disease, right? So my perspective is that we are creating it. Of course, we have created it over years and years of doing it. So it's not going to be something that you can just turn the switch off, even though maybe we are becoming a little bit more aware of our body. And if all our cells, right, within our body is all aligning in a way that they all start dancing to this new music. I mean, that's why binaural beats, all these sound healing, it truly
cymatics. I love it.
It truly works. So there
It
are ways
does.
to solve it by doing something really exciting, fun. Nothing else, just turn your music on that you love and start dancing. I mean,
Yeah.
basically do something that just kind of messes up your pattern that you've been doing, and then ultimately keep adding something on it. One of the things I also want to say is that majority of the people are dehydrated. Would you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I drink 2 of these a day. It's
You
like,
do.
yeah.
So, okay, let me ask you this. So since like when you didn't do it versus when you started doing it, did you feel the difference right
You know
away?
what? You know what people don't realize? You actually weigh heavier when you're dehydrated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay, explain.
you do. So your cells aren't as charged. I mean, they carry an electrical charge, but when
Yes,
they're nice and
0.07
full,
voltage. Yes.
yeah, when they're nice and full of fluid. So you're, how do I put this?
So your pH is no longer balanced, right? When you're dehydrated.
True. But you can overdo it as well. I mean, you can have too much water.
You can
But
really.
your,
I would be surprised with that, but yes.
yeah, but your red blood cells, they actually clump together. So your electrical charge is changed whenever you are dehydrated. So
Okay.
think of it like sludge. Think of it like sludge, kind of like, it's the same thing with a smoker's blood. So if I'm looking under the microscope, I can tell if somebody's a smoker.
So you can
I can
tell, of
tell.
course, when you look at the microscope if somebody's dehydrated. Oh, wow.
Dehydration or smoker. Like there's all kinds of different morphological changes that you can see. You can tell if somebody's on the borderline of getting an infection, because you start to see young white blood cells come out a little bit early before their maturation has finished in the bone marrow. You can see all of these different things.
Wow.
So to a trained eye, there was one particular, I think I was under the microscope one day, and I was working under a pathologist, and I was his right hand, and I'm looking at just a basic, just a screening, just a normal, pre-surgical, you go, you have your blood drawn, you get, whatever. And I happened to grab this, and I see something I had only ever seen in a textbook, in a very old textbook. And I thought, no, let me check myself. There's no way. There's no way this is, because this would mean leukemia. This is a hairy cell. And it's one of the most beautiful cells that you'd ever see, ever. And it's purple, it stains purple and red, and it's got these huge furry clouds around it. And you think, this is a problem with my smear, with my technique, with, you go through all these questions. It's not easy. It's not just always like a slam dunk. You have to have a very well-trained eye. And I remember being the only person, I was very young at this time, and the pathologist came in because I gave it a call. I said, this is what this is. And the pathologist came in and called this big, huge meeting and says, I want to know who called this. And I thought, shit, I must have been wrong. Like now I was the village idiot, and I was going to get called out for being an idiot, and shame on me. And, you're really nervous. I mean, I was brand new. I was really nervous. And he came out and said, you're the only one that knew what you were doing. So you're my right hand.
That's
there
good.
You go. Save the guy, right? So there's all kinds of things that you can see with, bacteria, parasites, blood, we can see all of these things. It's almost like I would love to do a study someday and see, and people are going to think I'm crazy, but see if I can actually see depression. And I know that sounds strange, but your blood takes on certain characteristics, and you start to see changes, right, at the cellular level, based on.
It makes sense to me, right? Because so I'm going to do this deductive reasoning with you, right? So
Yeah.
To me, depression means that truly, like generally all of us want to live, right? All of us want to be happy. All of us want to do certain thing. And it's funny because Dr. Shyamalan, he's one of my favorite producer, and he made the movie Happening. And in the Happening movie, he shows that internally everybody's switch gets turned off, where instead of desire to live, it's desire to be dead. So depression to me is an opposite feeling, right? Which is what causes people to be suicidal or where we are going. So it's like your bit is off. It's almost like what excites you, instead you're like so depressed that you just don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like you're going the other direction. So there has to be a connection with that.
Well, there has to be, because there are chemical changes that take place. You know, your heart starts it, and then your brain gives the instructions from there. So, you know, when a person gets down to a certain place in their heart space, in their mind, you know, their chemical reactions start to take place, and essentially that's when you start to see chronic disease.
Exactly.
So your body, and I tell people all the time, whenever you're thirsty, it means you're already dehydrated. So your body is telling you and giving you certain signs long before you ever experience thirst. Your thirst, or the symptom, is a product of the disease or of the illness or of the situation. So you're already well dehydrated, you know, after the fact that you know, after you are thirsty.
Exactly.
So that's why we see leukemia later on. Like you would see certain changes, or have fatigue, or start to see certain symptoms. But when your body finally breaks down at the cellular level, it's telling you, guess what? We're done here. I'm done messing with you. I've given you this symptom, this symptom, this symptom. Now I'm going to take your ass down. That's how this is going to go.
Exactly. No,
right?
that makes perfect sense. And, you know, so to come back to this whole thing, right? Like, because we want to make this as a solution oriented, let's say, the suggestion that I would give now, based on everything you shared with me and based on what I know, is that, you know, like at the end of the day, in order for you to exit this chronic pattern that you've created for yourself, by yourself in many ways, is the best thing is that you do something that is also chronic. It's almost like you fight something with the same thing that created it on the first place. So let's say whatever your problem is, you want to solve it. So let's say dehydration is the problem. Of course, you want to drink water. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure you understand that what caused it on the first place. And this case, you know, we're saying water is the reason. But in general, whenever you have something, it could be that you have a very stressful life you've created for yourself, right? So now, if you truly understand whatever the source is, because, you know, because I do health and life coaching one-on-one when I get a chance away from my NASA job, I've been amazed that when you truly find the source of even smoking, for example, right? You go back to the source, and when you truly put the light on in the dark room, right away your smoking disappears, because you truly understand what was the root cause of that problem. So I think that every single chronic situation that we have created for ourselves, there's a root cause that we also can know about by doing this deductive reasoning, right? Or by getting help.
One step at a time.
Help you.
Yeah. So is it okay, is it my time management? Is it, well, I made this decision instead of that decision. So, you know, or I didn't put myself first. This is why I didn't have enough water. Or, you know, this happened, sure, but I should be able to maneuver. Right. And so you actually, through deductive reasoning, you can step back and say, okay, this happened. Well, why did this happen? Well, because of this. Well, why did this happen? Well, because of this. And it is important to walk it back. And then you get to this place where you're like, oh, well, hell, now I'll just start over again. I'm good.
Exactly. Because because you figured it out. And it's funny because, you know, this whole thing you just mentioned, because majority of us are people pleaser. Majority of us kind of have been groomed to live in a life where you are creating a perception and you want to keep a perception of being nice. Sometimes I had like a habit that, because I get like I had a, you know, when I get hungry, I want to eat something. Otherwise my stomach starts hurting. But sometimes I don't share that if I'm with someone that I barely know. So I'm willing to, like, you know, not tell them until the point is past. Now it's point of no return, because I'm really hungry and I'm really aching. And now I need food like desperately, right? My sugar is very low. So the thing is, I did not do nothing for myself. And whose fault was that?
Yeah.
So no, I completely agree. And I know you and I can talk all day long on this, but I think we wanted to kind of just touch on this whole chronic disease and how you can truly solve it through many other different methods.
Perception.
Than doctor. And
perception is a big deal, guys. It's a really powerful tool, and allowing people to give you a label is powerful. You know, one other point I would make, and before we wrap it up, is, you know, I don't always share this, but I know that I've shared this with you. You know, people think that I'm crazy because I say, you know, I'll never have this exam again, the well woman stuff, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't, because why? Because it doesn't matter to me, because anything that I'm already doing, I'm not going to do anything better than what I'm doing now, because I'm living my best life for me. Right. So if I go and I have these things done, and I go, you know, get myself checked out, what I'm not saying to be irresponsible and not do those things, because maybe that's you, right? Or maybe that's someone else, or I'm just saying that it's important that when you go in to that situation, or to a medical office, or to a medical test, or something like that, it's important that you make sure that you take a step back, and, you know, whatever label you come out with, understand that that's not you. It doesn't have to be you. You don't have to accept that. It might be a reason, okay, or an excuse for a reason for you feeling the way you do, but take that and use it. Don't let it stick to you as a diagnosis, right?
Exactly, because whenever you say I am this, like I have this, like I have cancer, or I have autoimmune disease, you're owning to it and you're making it your own. And then ultimately, when you keep putting that spell on yourself, you truly are going to start exhibiting more and more of that disease. So that's why it becomes important.
And positivity works.
Oh,
positivity works.
Exactly. So, so that's the thing that I think one of the bottom line message that we're giving in this whole storyline is that please don't give power to anybody, whether it's your doctor, whether it's anybody who wants to put any kind of label on you that limits you from whatever you're possibly can basically acquire through your own work, inner work. And I think if you truly do what you believe is the right thing for your body, then ultimately all of these situations will wither away, and you're going to feel so much one with everything. And it's going to become a very good, fun ride. And once in a while, when you run into a problem, you'll know how to handle it, because you know how it feels when you're in the flow.
And let's say somebody's watching this and they say, okay, how do I do this? Where do I start? You know, because I'm on all of these medications, you know, how am I gonna, I don't know what to do. You know what? Go into the person prescribing for you and you tell them, this is my goal. I want to start taking a step backwards because I don't want to live like this anymore. This is my goal. I would like to be rid of half, if not all. So I need your help. Tell me medically how we can start to taper me down and help me with a program, right? Let's do it responsibly. And let's start weeding my body from the chemical dependency, right, that it's been on, and help me. So work with your practitioner or whoever and be responsible about what you're doing if that's your goal, right?
Exactly. Most of this medicine, you have to be careful when you're wiping them off, because just like you created this, you want to make sure you don't abruptly turn the switch off and create other cascading problems. So that is very true. And also if you're
because your body will hyper react to that. So there's going to be a rubber band that happens. You can't just, you know, have these chemical dependencies and then you just can't do that to your body. That's not fair.
Exactly. And then if your practitioner does not support the idea, then find another one who does. Because at the end of the day, you have to become your own advocate. And also, like, you know, like some people use kinesiology. I use my, inner knowing. Like, I know sometimes, like, you know, that what's truly you're putting in your body is what your body needs and what you are ready to wean off. And you can do your own research and even find out exactly what these drugs are doing to your body. And the more you know about it, the more you're going to start realizing that what you're doing is not necessarily good. And you're going to, so it's basically you have to become your own scientist in every way and do your research, do whatever needs to be done. So much
better. And it's so much better that way. I love when we get those types of questions that are, you know, deep or in depth, or, you know, and they'll get punted to myself or Emma or whoever. And I'm like, you know what? This person's out here trying to learn. I think it's great. I mean, but keep in mind, you know, that lotion that you're putting on your skin is 10 times more toxic than like anything I could give you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's like, make sure that you actually do your research. But I love that for people. I think it's empowering. And I think it's smart. And I had to do it. You had to do it, right?
Exactly.
That's why we are where we
Yeah,
are. Break
exactly.
the cycle, and it's the only way you're going to break it.
Exactly. So anyway, so I think we would say that you're going to, all the best in learning about whatever chronic condition you've created for yourself. And there are ways you can truly solve it. There are help out there. And of course, we are here raising awareness about things that we all have control over. I'm writing a quantum being book that's going to be published in October. And it's all about how incredibly amazing our human craft is. And Maria, she basically creates these products that you can put in your body, and that they are good for you, and they're going to help you solve the problems that we have around us, and it's going to make you empowered. And there are ways for you to be empowered on your own. However you want to take that journey, just remember that you are the one who's going to solve your problems, right?
Right. That's exactly right.
So,
and Shehnaz, you should tell them when your next workshop is.
okay, so basically right now I'm actually wrapping down my first workshop that I started teaching this year on Quantum Human. Is going to be ending on October 2nd. And then I'm going to start another one from October 9th onwards, Sunday afternoon. And right now, I think that it's going to be depending on whether it's going to be Quantum Human or light activation. So if you guys are interested in taking any workshop from me, please check out the website.
And Dwayne and I are going to take the October 9th.
Oh, perfect. That is amazing. And yes, so Maria and her husband will join me. And if anybody else wants to join me, they can even put as a comment below as they see this video through either Abeytu channel or through Shehnaz Soni channel. Because what we're doing is we're both passionate about these type of conversations. And we are making sure that everybody who can benefit from it can listen to us as well. So Maria, any last thought before we end?
No, I mean, I think that I've word vomited for the past hour, so I'm good.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I just love the fact that you do what you do, because it truly helps solve these questions, because I give a perspective that comes from a very spiritual realm and a little bit more mental realm. And what you do is you help connect the dot with the physical realm, because you truly look at the blood under the microscope. So that really helps. And we're going to keep doing these type of conversation because we have so many things we want to talk about. But if there are suggestions that you guys like to expand your understanding on, please comment below as well, and subscribe to our channels and we would appreciate that. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. 40 years of experience between the two of us. So different things. So, I mean, you ask a question, I'm pretty sure that we can make some sort of a great webcast out of it. So
I know, exactly. So thank you for supporting us.
Yeah,
and have a lovely day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.